Good afternoon, and thanks for coming. Today's session is going to be AI and Geospatial Research. My name is Sean Hurd, and I'm Director of the Center for Advanced Research and Spatial Information and Professor in the Department of Geography and Environmental Science. And we just have a couple of housekeeping things. Today's session will have 4 speakers. The first will be Professor Johan Albert. Second will be Professor Shifeng Sun. Third, Professor Frank Niemeister, and I'll finish up and support speakers.
Good afternoon. So this is Johan Albrecht, I believe. Well, I'm not so sure that everybody in this room knows me. I am a professor for computational and theoretical geography. In spite of that title, I am actually really interested in how GIS is used in practice. So aside from my professor title, I am the president of the GIS Certification Institute. Very much interested in the professional use of GIS and the ethical application of GIS. Today's workshop or seminar, whatever you want to call this, is about AI and geospatial information. This is, I have lost count, at least the third, if not the fourth time that AI really is making waves and makes a lot of promises, given that we have all forgotten about the first and second and possibly third generation of artificial intelligence. It stands to reason that this may also be just hype and not much more. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of the history of the use of artificial intelligence in working with geospatial data. GeoAI as a term is really new. Was first used by Liu, Jan Claramut, and some 20 other authors in an article just 2 years ago. It's actually worthwhile reading. It's just 2 pages. But yeah, it has many of the big names. Gagan, Goodchild, Betty. Those of you who took the GIS science seminar will recognize those names. So the term itself is really new, as opposed to what I claim that the use of artificial intelligence has actually been around for decades in working with geospatial information. When we look at what GeoAI is supposed to be, then there's a fairly limited range of things. It's machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, natural language processing. And it's this last bullet point here, which that everybody is aware of, because who does not know about ChatGPT, and I suspect most of us are using some of these tools. But that's really not all that AI is about. Right? So 2 years later, AG in a very nice place, in a very bad place, because it's a conference center without windows in Waikiki, Honolulu, Hawaii. 120 people got, supposedly a few thousand people showed up, but 120 of those had presentations on GeoAI. So from 2 years ago, the term was invented, to now everybody uses it. This is just the first 20 of 120 titles. And when we try to make sense of those, the methods used here are spatial analysis first and foremost. I'm glad that that still counts for something. Then machine learning, computer vision, deep learning, simulation, natural language processing. That sounds very much like what I showed you before as the definition of GIS. But it's really not so much about the whole range of AI methods. What I was pleased about to see is Oh, that's not application areas. Where does that? Please stay. All right. So one would think that AI methods, technical methods used by folks who are comfortable with technology would be more used in either traditional geoscience or in the physical realm of geographic applications. But it's actually a significant part, 1/3 of the papers is in social science. Then environment ecology, urban environments, agriculture, public health, mobility, transportation. That's a significant number, and I'm pleased to see about the wide range of AI use. However, as I mentioned before, there has been the application of artificial intelligence before we all learned about ChatGPT. So arguably the previous generation of use of AI was when Stan Openshaw created the conference series called Geocomputation. The first of those conferences was in 1996. I tried to see when was that term actually originally invented, and apparently it was not much before. Geocomputation itself has a completely different set of criteria of what the use of artificial intelligence means. First of all, geocomputation in and by itself was where Stan Openshaw tried to get folks from computer science, information science to work with geospatial applications. So according to Openshaw, if you only give me enough processing power, I can answer any geographic question. And rather than just using sheer processing power, he also tried to make that kind of processing more intelligent. And so he asked his colleagues in computer science, what are those methods that would help us? And so in that context, he invited folks to just contribute artificial intelligence methods as they had been around back then in the 1990s to the application or to working with geospatial data. So that was in the 1990s, but even before that, we had expert systems, neural networks, knowledge representation, spatial reasoning, heuristic research. All of these things have been around for a long time. So when we look at neural networks, for example, arguably the foundation for what we now know as the new Geo AI, the machine learning techniques, the deep learning. Neural networks have been used for the longest time in network classification and object recognition. When I got my PhDs in the early 1990s, that's what my colleagues in remote sensing did. I was the only GIS person in that department, but they all worked with neural networks long time ago. Knowledge representation. My own dissertation was based on semantic networks. Frames and objects were a way of representing knowledge. And then there was this whole wave, the whole conference series of GI science, which in and by itself is a conference series, was for many years just based on ontologies. So all of these were third, possibly even second generation of use of AI working with geospatial data. So in Openshaw's call for let's get AI used into working with geospatial data, he was asking for agent-based modeling systems, cellular automata, evolutionary, also known as genetic algorithms, the application of fuzzy reasoning, and the neural networks. Now the neural networks, that's what we still talk about. All the other ones somehow have fallen by the wayside, at least according to all these 120 presentations that we saw at the AG last month. Something is off here, because I would argue that these things are still really important. And we are actually teaching this here as part of our program. So Sean with his tigers, back then, before I arrived here, We had Keith Clark working with cellular automata, evolutionary genetic algorithms. Well, actually, I'm not aware that anybody here in our department is speaking. Okay, we have a student. Fuzzy reasoning, we do all the time. Just to show you that the hype has been around for quite a while. This is an article op-ed published in Computers and Geosciences in 1995. Have a look at this title. GIS remote sensing, okay, we would expect that. Expert systems, adaptive co-creating, object-oriented, fuzzy logic, neural network. Trying to put everything on the kitchen sink into one title just so that the paper gets published. It's actually really worthwhile reading. It's very much tongue-in-cheek. It's only 2 pages again. And I always share it with my students in a variety of my classes. But this was 95. So really, again, has been, if they make fun about something, then you make fun about something that is known. So this has been around for, now I would argue, 30 years. Short history of learning algorithms. Backpropagation has been around since the mid-1960s. Convolutional neural networks, that everything that we do nowadays is based on, has been around since the late 1980s. Recurrent neural networks started still in the last century. And only since the 2000s do we have a few new applications, but they all are gradual improvements on learning algorithms that we have been using for the longest time. So what's new? Given that I said we have been doing all of this for many decades. Well, then, first of all, we have our access to computational resources has just exploded. Who has them? Well, unfortunately, all the people that we don't really want to use those computational resources. So it's the military, it's the big Facebook, Amazon, what's this M stand for? Google. So all the big IT companies that have $1 trillion or more of revenue. Then what else is new? Data availability. We now are awash in data. Again, who has them? That same group of institutions. Who is left behind? Geography. Why? Because in order to amass these computational resources, in order to work with all this data, you need billions and billions of dollars. And in the end, either you're working for the military, they are not necessarily profit-oriented, but the companies are. And you don't really make much money with geography. So anything where we want to use GeoAI or artificial intelligence methods for working with geospatial data, that's left to a few academics who don't jump onto this bandwagon or who are not lured away by tons of money. So where is artificial intelligence used with respect to geographic information? Again, the military uses this extensively. Agricultural sensors. Those of you who were taking classes with me know this story. 4 years ago, I attended a meeting of the Open Geospatial Consortium, and there were presentations from companies that I have never heard of, including a company that's called climate.com. Now, what do? They're working with agricultural sensors. Every harvester, every large agricultural instrument around the world has between a dozen and several hundred sensors that sends information into the cloud every few seconds. That one company uses 30% of the computational resources of Amazon. Amazon Cloud, Amazon databases. More than, it's in the league by itself, more than anybody else. So there's money to be made with that information. Real estate, insurance, finance. We recently, earlier this year, had a data science geospatial data science conference over there at Columbia. And there we had presentations from companies that use not GIS, but use artificial intelligence to work with geospatial data, mostly in the realm of insurance and finance. So if you are nowadays looking for a piece of property and want to find out how threatened is it by floods or erosion or hurricanes or whatever, we have this data down to the individual property level. Not we, not you or I. It's again those companies. And then transportation. Whenever we use Google Maps or whenever we do have an Uber ride, they collect this information again on a second-by-second basis for millions of people at the same time. This is a humongous data set I would love to have access to. Because from a planning perspective, from a transportation perspective, for that matter, from a land use perspective, it would be great to have access to this data, but we don't. This is commercially sensitive data and is used by those organizations. So there are folks who work with artificial intelligence, who have the resources, but they are not using it to do what we here in geography are really interested in. Everybody knows about Tobler's first law. Tobler's first law has not been found by any AI algorithm yet. We have to tell the computer what we mean by that. Qualitative spatial reasoning is something that we could use AI for, but nobody is doing it because you can't make money with it. And artificial intelligence so far has not been proven to be good to discern relationships that cross scale boundaries. So what we typically do in complex geographic research, in landscape ecology, in working with complex systems, that's something. This is something that AI methods don't help us with, at least not those newly hyped AI methods. Having said that, you come back to these. Agent-based modeling systems are perfect to discern those complex relationships. Cell automata, somewhat. Genetic algorithms, these definitely. Fuzzy reasoning is what we need if you want to do qualitative spatial relationships, working with qualitative spatial data rather than quantitative. I have this colleague over there in urban planning who believes that Westchester is the same as Canada. But she believes Chelsea is it and Staten Island is Africa. Yes, I live in Canada. You all know that the maps from the New Yorker, the perceptions of New Yorkers of the rest of the world. That's qualitative spatial reasoning. And that requires different techniques, not what is currently on. All right. With that, I am done.
Thanks, Professor Albrecht. That was excellent introduction. A lot to think about there. We're going to hold questions to the end. So we'll try to each do about 20 minutes, and then we'll have about 20 minutes of discussion or longer if you want to hang out. So the next speaker is Professor Shipeng Sun, and he's going to be giving his take on AI and geospatial.
So here is another interesting lecture on the AI in geospatial research. So first of all, as a general concept, we should say, how we use the term, right? The AI is in fact a very broad term. is more than the machine learning. So the deep learning only part is small section in the machine learning. GeoAI, I don't know where to put it. Maybe just small section in the deep learning section, and also the popularity of AI in recent years. That's mainly because of deep learning, not because of general AI or machine learning we used years ago. So for that reason, for the GeoAI we talked about today is probably mainly in the deep learning field, but still, we cannot exclude all the methods in general machine learning or AI learning AI section. So just want to point out, don't misuse the word, like to know that AI is more broad than anything else in this chart. So even though nowadays we use AI, mainly mean the deep learning because we see the things in the media, but in academia, AI is really a broad term. We do this for so many years. So here is a little bit more detailed techniques in each section or each domain. So you can see here in the natural language processing, visual perception. There are a lot of things in AI, and then for machine learning, there are also different sort of perspectives on that. Even for the linear regression, some people think that's machine learning. Many probably don't think that's machine learning. And then like a PCA, we also use in a lot of geographic research, or the nearest neighbor. We use that for the cluster analysis. Very common. They are all in the broader domain of machine learning. More popular ones are probably the support vector machine, random forest, which like assembly of different things, and then the computer gonna figure out what's the best. So the real thing that power the deep learning is really the neural networks, and also the new ones. We will see a little bit later. You see the names like CNN, RNN, GNN, GAN, and all kind of models. The fancy terms we see from the paper, from the news. They're all within that neural networks domain and put into the deep learning. So we're going to see a little bit more details on that. So as we heard earlier, the neural network is not new at all. But before, we mainly use that as one single layer. AAN, artificial neural network. So we use that for like a classification, a lot of works in GIS, in geography. The deep learning is different because it uses a multi-layer network. So the data gonna go through multiple layers of the network. So each layer gonna do certain type of work. When we put them together, they're gonna do amazing work in some cases. So that's what I mean the deep. The deep means the structure of that network with multiple layers. This is why many times, like if you check the details of some papers, you see they are using deep learning whatsoever. But if you check their real structure, there are 2 layers, there are 4 layers. Are they deep learning model at all with like 2 or 4 layers? So we have to put a question mark on those models. So of course, there's no single answer for how deep is the deep learning model. But I don't think like a 2 or 3 or 4 layers gonna qualify a deep learning model. So we will see once more a few examples. And then you come to the GeoAI. And once more, there are a lot of competing definitions for this one. Some say we just use AI in geospatial field, so that's going to be GeoAI. So in that sense, we are going to bring AI into Geo. The other part says we should do the geospatially explicit AI. So we are going to introduce Geo into AI. So I think there are these 4 tests were used for many other things. But basically, you want to see, there are few features we should have for the GUI, such as, the invariance test, which means, the results from the model are not invariant if the issues are relocated. They are location sensitive. Okay, if you change the location, the result should be different. If they are the same all over the place, they're probably not a real Geo AI model. And then we also need to represent all the coordinates and also the spatial relations. Okay? And also we have say like we have used the spatial concepts like the first law of geography in all the models. If we don't use those concepts, it's probably not real Geo AI. And then the output also should be different in the spatial structure, should be different from the input. So that's also outcome tag. So if we have those four, we're going to say they're real Geo AI. However, they're pretty hard actually. That's not an easy thing. And I think there are the two big categories for the Geo AI. One is the raster-based, like we are doing the image or region-based AI. Like you can see from the images. In that sense, there are not much different from like a medical imaging or autonomous driving. But we take pictures, we take videos, so the AI can see things in the image or in the video, which we can say in the remote sensing. We have aerial photos, so the AI can see things in those photos. So they are just raster based. And then we have vector based. We have the points, lines, and polygons, which are much more difficult because the AI or the neural networks that we use now are not very good at representing those structures. So basically, there are the two approaches there. Either we can convert them into rasters, like a regular grid, or we can convert them into graphs. So that's my focus on the next few slides. A graph means we see the connections between those points or polygons. So before we go there, we want to very briefly go through the neural network architecture. You might see this chart so many times, right? Like input, output, and many layers in between. And then also there's different layers. As I mentioned, we need many different type of layers in between. Here are a list of mostly commonly used ones. Of course, there are many other types, but those are the commonly used. You can see the convolution layer, which for those who do the remote sensing, we use a convolution matrix so often, right, to detect the edges, to enhance our images. So that's not new to us. And also we have the fully connected layer, which normally is the last layer in the deep learning model, which leads to the final top to put the things into different classes, for example, and also many others. So once more, we need multiple layers to do the work. So here is one example. You can see, this one is for a convolutional neural network for object detection in raster images. You can see how many layers. This just one illustration. In the real world, it's probably more. But you can see, we just repeatedly use the combination of those different layers. So there are normally like over, even hundreds or even more layers to do a very good job. So the different combinations. So those are for the raster. So they are for the pixel, very good structure there. So 1 pixel by 1 pixel, like a matrix. The real hard thing is for this one, points. So they are not like a position on a regular grid. So their location could be anywhere. So that way we need a special type of tool or process for the location encoding to make sure they work well with neural network structure. In that case, this is the one method. You can see here, this method try to carry all the information of their neighbors. See here we have 20 points. So the location encoding gonna translate the data into like a 20 by 20 matrix. So every single point can see all other points. So we put that into the one layer of the neural network, which you can think it's gonna be very costly. When we have a large number of points. Even with that, it's not easy to do the work because we still need to consider distance, the direction, right, from one point to the other. There are a lot of things we don't capture really only with their coordinate. So you need something else to really represent all those points, all their spatial relationships. So that's just saying, it's not really easy to really integrate spatial into the neural network. Another popular one is really the graph representation of the spatial data, and then integrate this into the GNN, the graph neural network, or GCNN. There are a lot of type of graph-based neural network. That's the one method. You see how the points are connected using those edges, so we can see how they're related. That way, we don't have to handle the entire point data set. We only handle their neighbors. If they're too far, they're very far, we don't need to consider those points or those polygons. So that way, in some sense, we are integrating a little bit, right? The first law of geography. We only consider the near things, which has connections. So very briefly see, with that graph representation and graph-based neural network, we can do things like this, like classification, prediction, community detection, and all those works. But still, nothing here is new. We can use other methods to do the same work. And also to give you a reality check later, the results is not much different from the traditional method. We will see that a little bit later. So one of the most studied case is to use the GNN to predict the traffic, because naturally the traffic is on a network, so it's very easy to represent that kind of structure using a graph. So you can see here, this one, try to convert like the regions into a network to see the connection between the different regions. And then you can see here, on the CNN, we just use their immediate neighbors, right, on the grid to do to apply the convolution layer. But for the graph one, we have to search their neighbor, like linked by those network edges. So a little bit different, but the concept is same. So that's also we sort of integrated the graph neural network with the convolution network. So that's called the GCNN, but the principle is the same. So here is one example. So the research is using the GCN, the graph convolution neural network, to predict the check-in numbers at QIs, the point of interest, like restaurants, maybe some hotels, some places is very hot. People go there, to visit those places. So they try to predict, the number of visits using the network. So this is how they do the work. So they use like a 4,636 QIs that they build in network. They use a weighted matrix, like every single QI, they are going to see how that point is connected to all other points. And then do the similar neural network thing with many layers in between, and then make the prediction. Of course, we don't have the detail to really go to the technical thing, but I only want to show these results. You can see the reality of the GeoAI research. You can see the the results here, here we have a few methods, the MLP, like the linear, multilinear regression methods, or the spatial autocorrelation, or some other GWR, which are relatively traditional spatial methods. And we can just see single one, MSE, the mean squared error, the prediction error. You see what's the difference? Yes, the GWR one is lower, but the one on the right side, 0.1313. But it's not significantly better than the traditional method. So it's still, there are a lot of things we need to do to really improve the accuracy of those AI predicted results. Of course, that's also point to a lot of limitations of the current AI works. So here I list a few factors that also covered by the earlier talk, like the data, right? We have big data because one of the applications in the network is you can see the size it kind of reduce very quickly. If your input data is very small, you cannot afford too many layers. So you have to have a very big data set to afford many layers to do good work. You can see this research only uses like a 4,600 data points, which is too small. Why? I read their paper. They have like millions of data, but they only choose like the readings over 900. So they just filter the data. Why they don't use the whole data set? There must be some reason there. Why they don't use that? But still, data issue, right? And also we have the data quality issue. Like we did some work to check, the data quality from many cities, and it turns out, there are a lot of issues with our data. Even they're released by the government agencies, supposedly very high quality, but still there are a lot of issues. And also, once more, how we can represent our spatial data and also their principles. So, in the end, how deep, right, we can make our models to do the real work, to have the real power of the AI models. The last one is really the applications. Can we do anything new? Right? Like we see a lot of generative AI today. What does it mean in spatial world? So the AI produces fake data, fake spatial data. How we can use that? For what purpose? Maybe there are only confused people. We don't know, right? There's a lot of things we can think about and also do some work in those different parts of the AI. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor. So we're getting deeper into the deep learning for sure. That was great. Professor Niemeister is up next, and I have a feeling she's going to be talking about remote sensing a little bit.
All right. Hello, everyone. What should I do? You could either use that or if you want to try the mouse. Huh? Up to you. Oh my God. It may or may not. May not work. Okay. All right. For those who know me, I'm the remote sensing specialist in this department. I think the other three like it RDS or whatever. So yeah, today I'm going to focus on using machine learning, deep learning with remote sensing data. And particularly because I was told this is oriented for students. So in today's talk, I'm going to present some of our student real work. Okay. So okay. So I'm going to start with the course I'm teaching here. So most times students take these courses, eventually start this remote sensing track, and then start working on the remote sensing related project. We have a lot of application using AI to machine learning in remote sensing applications. So anyway, I know some of you took those class already. The first one, remote sensing environment, basically you get a background information about remote sensing. And then next level is advanced remote sensing, which is really kind of very useful course in a way that Google put a lot of remote sensing data on their Google Cloud, and they developed this cloud-based platform. You can do image processing, so you don't need to download the image at all. So basically, one line of code, you can get like I don't know, 50 years global landscape data, for example. Okay, so very powerful, and I found the students really enjoy it because there's a lot of online resources you could use. Even someone without any coding experience, you can still get a lot of from this course. Anyway, and so particularly advanced remote sensing, we talk about using remote sensing, using machine learning to solve remote sensing application. So, and the other one, the environmental data science, is rather than Python-based course and learning how to process an image, remote sensing image. So we have some part talk about the remote machine learning. How do you code using Python to do machine learning stuff. So most times students take these 3 courses, then they start work on their thesis. For example, Jerry start work on his thesis, now, and after taking all these courses. So next, I'm going to just give you a little bit of background information about remote sensing. Can I? Okay. So basically, every minute, every day, they're collecting global satellite data, all kind of Earth information. Okay, so this is just one example. This satellite goes through the orbit, and so throughout the day, then you get the global data. And so anyway, we're collecting this, for example, one of the satellite Landsat, since 72, it's already started collecting, global Earth observation information. So already more than 50 years data, right? So we got plenty of this. There are many different types of remote sensing. For example, this is multispectral, you get a different spectral band. And this is a hyperspectral, means you get so many spectral band information. So, and also recently we got this very cool stuff, this LiDAR. So this is a global ecosystem dynamic investigation mission. This is what we call the JEDI mission, collecting global scale vegetation structure information, for example. And there's not only this is JEDI is one satellite LiDAR mission. There's ISAT 2, just particularly focused on collecting ice topography information, for example. There are so many types of remote sensing data being collected. So the idea for the application of machine learning, deep learning into application remote sensing is we got so much of this data. So we want basically extract information used for a surface biophysical property, for example, how much leaf, how much carbon there, right? So this one is we want to get each tree information, and so that we can calculate the carbon component. Okay. So that's how machine learning and deep learning play a role. So I think Shiping and Professor Albright went through this already. I'm not going to say much about this. So for machine learning, deep learning, you have supervised learning. Basically, you have your training data. You have collected some ground data to train your model, right? So there are different types of machine learning. Your random forest, support vector machine, and deep learning, conventional neural network stuff. And also this unsupervised learning means you don't really know any ground truths. Just like computer itself learn the patterns, right? So that's unsupervised learning. We both use both approach, supervised. So there are many applications of using remote sensing, deep learning and machine learning in remote sensing using remote sensing data. So I list a few of them. I included some of the links. And urban environment, rural, I think someone talked about agriculture stuff, mapping, and weather climate, also another big application using deep learning. Because for weather, running the weather model is so computationally expensive. So
they try really hard trying to see whether we can use deep learning to speed up this prediction. So I include a link called Dynamic World app. This is the basically can give you real-time 10-meter spatial like land use land cover data set. So they're doing this in the background using AI. Okay, so real-time land cover land use map. So anyway, so there's a lot of okay. So now I'm going to focus on our student work here. Okay. So back to like 8 years ago, I think some of the work is published already, and some of the work is ongoing. So like for example, the first paper, Julia Mars paper, and she started, and in my remote sensing class, she said, Professor, I want to do something related to machine learning. Do you have a topic? So we start talking, and we have some ground data with the tree species, and she started using like machine learning. I think for this study, she basically compared different type of machine learning model, which one perform best. And she also basically using hyperspectral data I talk about, and also LiDAR data. She I think she compared just using hyperspectral data or just LiDAR data, or combine them, which one performed the best for tree species identification. Okay, this one published in remote sensing already. And Julia already graduated, and she moved on to Boston University for her PhD. Now she graduated already. She worked in NIST, National Institute for whatever management. So anyway, and the next two is Vivash, and I don't know, someone will probably know him, Vivash, and he did using machine learning to look at some of groundwater contamination. He got 2 papers published. I think right now he's working in the Department of Emergency Management. Yes. So they all got a very good job. And so Tony finished last year. Tony's work is also on tree species classification, but rather than he focused on compare using machine learning, deep learning, what is the difference, identify tree species. So currently I have this Francesca is a PhD student, and we have recently got project work with Smithsonian Institute trying to, this project is trying to using remote sensing technique to map this bird-friendly coffee. I don't know for those who drink coffee, and if you take this bird-friendly coffee, that's your contribute to this really help this environment. So this project, we wanted to use remote sensing to try to identify bird-friendly coffee farms. So right now she's using machine learning, trying to find out different remote sensing information. For example, spectral, seasonal, LiDAR, like topography, what is impact on the accuracy. And so anyway, so I'm going to present some of her result. I'm going to present some of her result. And now we have also Jada coming and saying, oh, I want to do a panel. And she took my course. Now she's using machine learning to look at water quality. So remote sensing, we got this air quality information is referred like the whole atoms column, right? But for air quality, we really care about the air on the ground we breathe, right? So it's naturally how can we go satellite measure the air quality to ground-based air quality. So that's what she's doing now. And so Jerry is here and just started on the project. We have a project with NASA JPL people, and we're trying to really design like a future LiDAR and radar mission. Okay, so we do a lot of simulation. One of the components is we want to look at and how, so look at can we simulate future like a LiDAR radar mission, like what it look like? So we're going to do a lot of simulation things. So one of the job Jared is doing is we want to go from LiDAR, trying to get some of the vegetation structure input to drive our LiDAR and radar model. Okay, so I'm going to show some of his results. He just started recently. Okay, So the first one I'm going to talk about the Tony's work, and he just finished the last year. So he's trying to do using hyperspectral data. Remember, there's so many spectral bands, so narrow spectral band, and through machine learning, deep learning, try to get a tree species. That's kind of really hardest questions to do using remote sensing. We do land cover classification. It's very popular. Since remote sensing started, we're already doing land cover type classification. But identify tree species, that's hard. That's hard one. Okay. So I'm still revising his paper. He got finished. Since I'm still revising, we're gonna submit it to remote sensing search. But anyway, so his idea is we want to derive kind of a machine learning model which is could be applied because NSF founded a global US network. They collect a lot of field data marine vegetation structures, marine species, any ecological parameter. Okay, they have several sites. So the idea for this project we see, can we develop a machine learning model you can apply to several, across the US. It's very tough. You do machine learning, you test it, look good on your site, but when you apply to different site and the result not good, right? So that's kind of the purpose of this study. Can we develop a model, machine learning model to do tree classification. So he tested different, when you do the supervised learning, you have to have a ground data, right? Where is the tree is, what species, right? So there's a way you have to label this information to your remote sensing data in order to train the model, right? So he tests different labeling methods. And also another very important issue in terms of application of machine learning in remote sensing is about the spatial autocorrelation issues. In remote sensing field, long time ago, once machine learning come up and because there's so much data, so we rush to using machine learning to do whatever application, all kind of application. But they looks very good, very high accuracy. But it's turned out that when you try to compare them, in different testing a different site, the accuracy is very low. We don't even know. Only after several years we figure out that because when you test for your site, and when you say you randomly select your training, right? And for training and testing, could be this the thing used for training could be neighbor. For the testing pixel could be neighbor of your training pixel. So in this case, even your machine learning model doesn't really work, you still get a very high accuracy. So the reason is because your training and testing pixel next to each other, they relate each other because it's a spatial autocorrelation, right? So in the beginning, we don't really realize these issues. We're high accuracy because a lot of machine learning models just feed into this data, right? You get a very high accuracy, but you can't really apply to different sites, right? So for his study, he's trying to look at different way to avoid this spatial autocorrelation issue. But I only have 5 minutes. Okay. So anyway, he also tested deep learning stuff. Okay, I'm not going to go through detail, but what I want to say is, so he compared deep learning and machine learning, and this green line deep learning and red plus is machine learning. You don't see for intersite, you don't see the advantage, a little bit, right? The green line a little bit better. But when you train the model test in the different site, you do see the green line, the deep learning much better than machine learning. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the detail. I have one more. Okay, I have 2 more. Okay, so this one is Francesca work, and I'm trying to map a bird-friendly coffee and using remote sensing data. And so she trying to, with coffee, this is strong coffee, with shake coffee, and this is bird-friendly coffee. Bird-friendly coffee, basically you have a mixed treat for, basically you have first, and then you have a coffee on the front. And so this is, help with the recipe stuff. And so her study is trying to identify where's the first region, where's bird-friendly coffee, where's strong coffee, where's the shake coffee. So she tested using multispectral data add LiDAR data, add topography, add also climate. So she tests the different importance of the different factors. And what I want to point to you about the spatial autocorrelation issue, right? So, if you just say, oh, I randomly select my, in my, you collect the wrong data, you say, I randomly select this pixel for training, another 30% for testing, you get like 99% accuracy, okay? But when you remove this spatial autocorrelation, it's actually getting low. So, but anyway, she tested for different parameters, what's important for each, adding each variable into it. Okay, the last one is the Jared's work. And so his work is trying to, using this LiDARs, this multiple LiDAR, this, like the point cloud, we call it point cloud, is really recording each laser point, return X, Y, the location where is hit ground, and return back. So this is X, Y location we call the point cloud. He go from point cloud trying to identify each individual tree locations. Okay, so I'm not going to go through here. And this one is unsupervised learning. So he used this model called adaptive mean shift clustering approach and developed by JPL people. So we're using their model. Okay. All right, so this is a validation. He did look at the tree height information and tree size information. And the top one is the ground data and the bottom one is the retrieval result. Pretty good. I mean, yeah, pretty happy. Okay, so finally, the challenge in remote sensing, there's more AI learning model being developed in computer science community. However, using remote sensing, using machine learning in remote sensing, there are several challenges, and one of them we're trying to address is spatial data, this spatial autocorrelation issue. We have to remove that. Another thing is about the data scarcity. How there's so many application AI there collect the huge of the training data, but for remote sensing application we don't have many training data, so that's another thing. And I think Tony's work also tested we don't really have enough training. Can we do this clustering first, and then we do use limited training data to do this? So we call it semi-type of training. So we have to overcome these issues. So lastly, I want to give some resource for students. So we do a lot of work using remote sensing, using machine learning, deep learning in our lab, and I'm happy to work with students. And also recently we got another NASA grant, and this project particularly just hired students. So most time the way it works is come to my class, take my class, you get all the background training, and you start working on a project and get paid. Okay, so this one, and this is a list of all the application, different type of application are using deep learning for remote sensing. And I don't have time to go through the website, and my message for students, you don't need, right now everything open source. Okay, so it's make it so easy to learn. All right. So I want to develop your computation skills, learn Python, R, Google Earth Engine, and trying to get also analytical skill means like trying to find a good research question. What is research you want to solve? Okay. All right.
Thank you, Professor Niemeister. That was exciting. I want to take your class. Sounds like very cool stuff. So I'm the last speaker, and I'm going to be talking about trajectory analysis, really generative models for trajectories.
It may or may not work.
It doesn't work. And so this is the basic outline of the talk. We have early ABMs, agent-based models, the concept of local choice models. What are the drivers of movement? Movement is such an essential part of everything we do as people, but also in natural ecosystems, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about the language models. ChatGPT, everybody has heard of it. Does anybody know what it stands for, the GPT? Other than the faculty here? It's generative pre-trained transformer. Okay? And I'll be talking a little bit about that. And so, given the power of these, is there a way we can use them in geographic analysis? I'm going to be talking about an approach of linear encoding of space, taking two-dimensional space and pushing it into a single dimension, and then some initial results. And this is really new stuff. I literally got this working the weekend before AAG, where I presented it. I've been working with a tiger biologist, University of Minnesota, for a long time, James David Smith, and he's a brilliant scientist. And we've been working in a number of places, first Nepal, more recently Thailand, and our study site is in this area here. So west central, right on the Myanmar border. Just to make this real, this is what it looks like. This is one of the smaller valleys. The one next to it is 4 times this size. And this is rich in all kinds of mega fauna, tigers, panthers, leopards, elephants. It's pretty unbelievable. And just to make this real, this is a tiger, female tiger. And when you see little dots moving around the screen, think of this tiger, because I only have dots moving around the screen for the simulation. So this is an early ABM model that myself and my team wrote 25 years ago. Okay, and it used an object-oriented GIS, and this is what it looked like. It's not. Oh, there it is. And this was programmed. These objects, tigers, were programmed using the knowledge of Dave Smith. From all of his work over the previous, dozen or so years. So we have time, we have the object, we have the state change and the behavior associated with it. Okay. We won't spend too much time on this, but just to show you what it looks like, these are home ranges for the male. These are the female home ranges. The brown are cattle, which go into the forest. The green are wild prey, and they're doing stuff like hunting, mating. This female just got pregnant. She turned blue, so the state was cartographically defined in this model. And we also actually have a mechanism in here that if enough cattle are killed within proximity, the dead cow will be poisoned, the tiger will eat it, and the tiger will die. We were trying to model that, look at the interaction between humans. And this is a score of how many wild prey are killed, domestic prey. We could change the prey density here to see how survivable it was for tigers. So this is 25 years ago. We created on one of the early Intel chips. So what did we model? We modeled movement with persistence and external bias. So persistence is, if I take a step in this direction, there's a certain probability that I'm going to keep going in that direction. Okay. External bias is I've got to pull from out there. Maybe the male is going to visit the next female, which is also programmed into the model. We model poisoning of cattle carcasses by local people, hunting in response to hunger, interaction between male and female tigers, the visits, the mating. And the movement was constrained by the home range. What we didn't model, context-sensitive movement. Interaction, male-male, female-female, patrolling behavior. These are territorial animals, so they patrol their home range. And everything else is really encapsulated in that global objective. And this is really the drivers of movement. We have biological state, we have behavior, we have interaction and environment, and we have local choices and global objectives. And this creates a pattern of movement in space and time and across different scales. So it was, of course, a game changer when we could put GPS collars on tigers, and this was the first one in 2001. And this is in Nepal, the female with her male cub. And so suddenly, rather than use the notes from my colleague, we actually had GPS data. So for instance, we could look at the relationship between slope and the use of slope areas by the tiger. It turns out that's a really nice chi-square distribution. if you look at these two, they're almost identical. One is actual data and the other is a chi-square distribution. So the cool thing is, when we're doing this movement with persistence, we make a step in that, or we're going to make a step in that direction based on the probabilities. We can choose among 3 pixels. We can actually grab a random sample from that distribution, see which one of these choices is closest, and then go in that direction. Okay? So this is a generative model that I'm going to be showing you. And so this is the actual model. So it's making a choice based on a tighter sensitivity to slope. Sometimes it will go in the higher areas. Most of the time it won't. And we can run this. So this is the concept of a generative model. Right? So this is based on actual GPS data. Now, this is what a correlated random walk looks like. Okay, this is what a context-sensitive correlated random walk looks like. So what I've done is I've run this model thousands of times and plotted the number of hits on each pixel. And as you can see, the patterns here are pretty close to here, but I've only included a local choice model. Okay, and even so, it captures quite a bit of. This is the actual GPS data right here. Okay, so since then, we've done quite a bit of work on controlling behavior and interaction, looking at global scale behavior. So obviously, we're interested in scale, right? And when these generative models came online, such as ChatGPT, you can't ignore them. Okay, they're incredibly powerful. And there's different levels. This is the simplest one, a bigram language model, where you're just looking at what just happened. There's also a concept of a basket of words, where you sort of average what happened over the last 10 letters or parts of words. And the transformer model is the most sophisticated. And there, you're contextualizing language like you've never been able to do before. And, you know, when we think about a fly landing on my nose versus a bird that flies over the ocean or over the lake, those are two different, same word, totally different concepts. And what the transformers enabled us to do is to contextualize meaning and sequences of parts of words in a whole array of ways. And this is the incredible paper, which now has over 100,000 citations. All you need is attention by a group of some professors, mostly Google folks. And this came out in 2017. So to show you the impact of this and how quickly, you know, this is 2024, 7 years, this thing has taken off. And this is the foundational model. I won't go into it because it's extremely complex, but it deals with encoding and decoding of information. And it captures, you know, the context. So it used to be that neural networks sort of fizzled out if they were looking too far in the past. And with this transformer model, it can look very far back when it's figuring out what to do next. Really revolutionary. So how does it relate to geography? Probably wondering why I wore this t-shirt, right? Spatial temporal data is about space, time, and scale. And if we can capture that, we can describe, we can model, we can predict, and we can generate. Okay. And so the question is, how do we take that complexity and warp it into a linear model, which is what language is? It's linear. Now, we do know that we, in the transformer model, we're encoding the order at which things occur. Okay. So you can think of that order as a temporal sequence, right? We're thinking geographically. But how about space? How do we deal with space? We somehow have to take 2 dimensions, move it into 1 dimension in order to use these models. What do we do about scale? That's even more complex. So here's a possible solution. like I said, this is very new. I haven't gone through all the testing. We're going to look at the linear quad tree as a way to move from two-dimensional space to one-dimensional space, okay? And this is what that quad tree looks like. So you've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So things that are close linear are close in space, okay? And these numbers are called Morton numbers by the person who invented this quad tree. So let me talk about the workflow here. We take a georeference grid at a certain level. So these are levels, and so 4 would be the depth of that quad tree. And so now we're going to create that quad tree. We're going to populate it with these Morton codes, and then we're going to overlay it with the GPS points and assign Morton codes to each of those GPS points. I'm talking, the GPS is a collar around the tiger, and every hour we're grabbing a GPS location. And this is what it looks like, okay? So this is a 66-meter grid, level 7, so you can think of those little, and it's to the 4th power, right? Because every 1 goes into 4, that's why it's quad tree. This is 132 meters, and you can see the difference is, well, obvious. But what happens is, as we go down in the levels, the vocabulary increases, and the vocabulary is a Morton code that represents a geographic coordinate, okay? Which makes sense, right? Because we're going to capture, at the higher levels, we may have multiple GPS locations within those coarser grids. As we go finer and finer, we're going to get 1 or maybe 2 in that grid cell, okay? So the language, the locations that were visited by the tiger is going to increase as the number of levels increases as well. And here's what that looks like when we plot it out. And obviously you can start to see difference in these things, where you've got more little dots here than there. We've got greater specificity at 66 meters than 132. And let me get this one going too. Now, I didn't have time to do a trace here, so you can see the patterns, but I know this data very, very well. And this area here, the tiger. So these are generated movement using the bigram model. So the simplest model. It's basically a pretty simple neural network. Okay, and you can see whenever it pauses, that's probably a kill site. And it's going to spend quite a bit of time down here because there's another tiger which is operating in its terrain. And you can start to see a little bit of the difference between these, where this will take longer pauses. They're really operating at a different scale. So if there's a kill site, the tiger will wander 133 meters, maybe a little more, but basically keep within a certain area. So that dot is just going to sit there. Each beat is basically an hour. And now we're going to increase the scale, or decrease it, I never know which. We're at 265 meters and 529, so half a kilometer, right? And you can start to see the pattern become sort of, more determined by the raster, right? Whereas this one, even though it's at 265, you're starting to see the patterns of movement that it's covered. And I've only been able to show 300 generated points. The tiger data is actually about 4,000. Okay. So I'm just showing a limited number. And so now, if we look at the movement associated with this one is going to be a lot more pauses. It's going to be more angular, 90-degree angles. Whereas you see this one, this is kind of an interesting scale because it's not capturing the real detailed movement of the other ones, but it's capturing the sort of global objectives. Remember, I talked about global objectives. And now I've got a generated movement, and I've got the actual GPS. And I showed this to the tiger biologist to see if you could determine which was which. And they're very close. Now they're different because this is a stochastic model, so it should be doing something similar to that. It should be visiting parts of this home range within a certain frequency. It should be making kills at a certain frequency. So where are we at? Well, I haven't really shown this to my team yet, but they're just the tiger biologists. But I think Johan's point that he made early on, you saw the complexity of the agent-based model that I wrote 25 years ago in my team, right? Can you capture that complexity with these new models? And that's really sort of the big question here. First, how do we validate it? So the next steps, how do I validate it? I'm going to visualize the traces, okay? Number of kills per month, visitation to home range boundary. And then I've already set up to implement this in the transformer model, where it's not going to just look at what just happened. It's going to look at what happened over the last, say, 12 hours or 24 hours to determine what's the next move that this animal is going to make. So there'll be some interesting experimenting there. And integration of other parameters, interaction with tigers, the environment, slope, human impact, position, and watershed. So you start to see that natural systems are extraordinarily complex. And can these new models represent those systems? And so, hopefully what I've shown is that we can use them. We can capture both geography, scale, and the temporal component within these models. But there's just a whole lot more to think about to see if they're going to deliver. So of course, over the last 25 or so years, I've worked with a number of colleagues, but actually this team is still together. And they've been together for, about 20 years, and Dave has been around forever. Samaya Dodge is a professor at University of California at Santa Barbara. And Achar is the lead tiger biologist in Thailand. Actually, we're going to have questions for all the speakers. And okay, I finished 2 minutes early, and we did each do 20 minutes. It just seems like you need 20 minutes, to be honest, and I think you saw that. So if there's any questions for any of the speakers, hopefully you wrote some notes down. Let's start with that.